This is Stan Heuston for the Something About It Now SANE campaign in the May 18, 2019 Australian federal election campaign for voter policy ranking in future federal elections. The proposal of Something About It Now of voter policy ranking, which we have asked New England candidates to commit to presenting to their parties and policy teams as soon as possible, so we can publicise before the May 18 polling day that commitment to take the idea back to their parties, and further that they reply within a year with a firm indication of party or policy team support for policy ranking is, I have suggested to independent Adam Blakester, enigmatic. On the one hand, it would transform the processes of government, even at its present stage one. On the other hand, it is only a realisation of the way the system is supposed to work, but doesn't. Here is the proposal submitted to all candidates. Quote, "On behalf of the Something About It Now SANE campaign in the May 18, 2019 federal election, could you please indicate as soon as possible by return email heustons@northnet.com.au your willingness to do the following: your response for publication to voters before May 18. I agree to present to my political party or policy authority the following proposal: policy ranking, federal election for the House of Representatives. On the ballot paper for the House of Representatives candidates, there should be provision to list policies the candidate's party or the candidate as part of government will enact if elected. Voters may choose to numerically rank from order of first priority 1 to lower priority 2, 3, etc. any, all or none of the policies of any, all or none of the candidates, the rankings to be used to determine a national policy priority order by counting for the candidate for whose successful election the vote is counted. Election results should include total national policy rankings." Close quotes. I must emphasise that for the purpose of the election in a couple of weeks' time, candidates are only asked to agree to present the policy ranking proposal to their parties for consideration. For the measure to become National Liberal or Labor Party policy can be expected to take many months. Candidates have been further asked, therefore, to come back to SANE, me, at heustons@northnet.com.au from their parties and teams in a year by May 18, 2020, with an indication of support for the proposal, although individual support now for it is welcome. You can see that at this stage of the voter policy ranking concept, the development of policies for government remains with the parties, policy committees and candidates. Voters would just rank them in priority order at the ballot. In a vague way, the system is already supposed to be that policies of the successful party at the election make up the program of government. But the problem is that in just voting for a person or a party, voters can give no specific indication of which policies they think most important, or even, in fact, of which policies they actually support. If Labor or the Nationals send you a leaflet with 8 policies described in the usual 3 lines each as an election platform, voters can't distinguish the level of their support for different policies when they vote, and can't even say that they oppose 2 or 3 of the 8 policies. Whereas ranking them as they vote in the election, the voter might simply not rank policies that they didn't support at all. No degree of support. And what I have described of the existing system is probably its best scenario. Many voters will vote for a candidate or party on the basis of ideology alone, and when it comes to the practicalities of actual policies that meet the changing circumstances of government, prove meaningless. Because of the vagueness of popular opinion about policies, which ones the government implements by enacting legislation and so on becomes an open question, which the media in particular feels free to argue about and pressure the government on as if the people had never voted the government into power. Examples are the referendum on gay marriage and the across-the-board company tax cuts of the Turnbull government, clear policy commitments of the winning party which the media felt free to debate as if the people didn't exist. These and other policies only implemented in compromised form. With a clear national policy prioritisation from the people, the ground would be laid for stopping this bun fight in Parliament and the media about what policies should govern. The government would have a specific policy program of government from the people. It would have to explain details of the policy's enactment and changes in degree, timing, etc., because things like economic conditions can change beyond the government's control. Parliament would retain its usual discretion in other areas. But probably the most important element of this is how well the government governed would depend very much on the quality of the policy it presented to the people before the election, and how well it explained those policies to get a sound popular ranking of them. That change, where in the few months before an election was called, the parties presented to the Australian Electoral Commission a policy statement each week of a page in length to be distributed to voters when the election was called, would by itself be transforming. The parties would know that the success of their government depended on the quality of those policies. That would require of parties a degree of hard work and ability which would mean that a party which could not draw on the most able people would fail in government. There would be further attractions for the most able people to run for Parliament. The state of affairs, where having one government, the Senate was able to obstruct every policy for which the government was elected, as happened to the Turnbull government, would be at the beginning of its end. So vague is the policy mandate of government now that the Senate feels free to obstruct government without any regard for popular mandate at all. It would be little wonder if people of real ability declined to seek election to Parliament in circumstances where everything they tried to do was stymied. The capability of the Senate, or even individuals in the House of Representatives, and the media to ignore the government's elective mandate of the people would be further reduced by policy ranking, though through reduction in division among the people themselves. It is the present practice for people to all participate in the election, and then for many on the losing side to continue to oppose the government anyway, making it clear that in voting they only agreed to accept the result if they won. This backstabbing of people's fellow citizens is rationalised by an idea that there are such deep ideological differences between the parties that for supporters of one to ever support government by the other is unthinkable. This ideological irreconcilability between the parties appears to be a fiction, which I think an increasing number of people recognise just from the fact that the parties do the same job of government within the same political system. They alternate seamlessly in government about every 6 years, they apply each other's ideologies as circumstances require, they have bilateral positions, policy in common. The ideological gulf is a fiction, designed by the parties to hold their blinkered, rusted on, as Nicky Savva recently described them, core bases, and provide the media with dramatic conflict for its stories, copy to fill its pages, and power only possible over a divided people. Ideology may be, in effect, a device to keep ordinary people out of politics, restricted to the ideological insiders. The furious partisans among the people play an effectively assigned role of providing a facsimile of democratic debate to sustain the myth that the people rule the democracy. With election policy ranking, mandate would shift from ideological illusions to the practical merits of policy, that being the real concern of most people. Parties and candidates would have to list many policies in common: border security, military commitment in Syria, anti-terrorism measures are a few bilateral policies now, to be electorally credible. Other policy differences would only be by degree: how soon the budget returned to surplus, the levels of schools and health funding, of taxation, and so on. Differences would be in the detail of these policies, but rankings and who won the election would reflect these detailed differences. Popular policy rankings for parliamentarians of the defeated parties, the opposition and minors, would be a further guide to popular opinion with a unifying effect. Not only would people realise that they could only rule if they united with their fellow citizens around the elected government, but the calmer, rational, full consideration of policy of government by a more united people could bring democracy to reality, overturning the present chaotic situation where the media turns government into the daily bunfight in which the slower deliberations necessary to consensus among the people are impossible. At this stage of the policy ranking proposal, with policy formulation still entirely with the parties and candidates, I can see no grounds for concern about the people's capability to take a greater role in government. I can see no problem at any stage, but in terms of what is proposed now, where only those interested in taking the extra trouble need do so, and they with only as many policies as they choose, concern is groundless. Policies can change, as can governments every 3 years. Errors can be corrected and lessons learned from that. The more relevant consideration seems to be that people can't take responsibility if they aren't given responsibility. That leads, finally for now, to what gives popular policy ranking a unique chance in fixing the system. It adds to the power structure the missing element which is the key to the system's dysfunction because of their absence from it: the people. Thanks.